Russ Kinsler with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. I'm the Missouri River System Supervisor, based out of Riverdale. The salmon fishery right now, I would say, is actually trending down a little bit. Our sizes have been declining for about 3 years now. They're still pretty close to what the long-term average is, but they are slightly below that. The long-term average for males is 4.9 pounds, and the long-term average for females is 7.1. And we're at, last year, the males were 3.9 and the females were 5 pounds. As the reservoir ages, that productivity decreases. And we're seeing that in our smelt sizes are decreasing, and we think that's why our salmon sizes are decreasing. Our smelt are getting smaller, and so the salmon have to catch more of them, put more energy into catching that food, and they're just not getting as big as they used to. This year, the plan was to stock 400,000. We ended up stocking 376,000 approximately. They didn't do as well in the hatchery last winter as they normally do, but it's still a good number of fish. We're planning in the future to drop that number to 300,000 just because of our sizes decreasing, and try and see if we can increase that size a little bit and still maintain, a good catch rate. So the problem with salmon fishing is you go through the droughts and then the high periods in the droughts, and you tend to lose anglers during the droughts because it gets tough. And salmon fishing, you have to be willing to put some time in sometimes to catch fish. So you lose some anglers, but right now, we've been pretty high for quite a while, and our salmon fishermen numbers are, I would consider, pretty good right now. Historically, they always fished them at ice off, or ice out. And there's got to be a period where that kind of went away, and the last 3, 4, 5 years, they've started doing that again. And like this year they did it too, and they catch salmon right away at ice off. Then traditionally, the main bite occurs, mid to late summer, and August being the prime time. But usually around the 4th of July, you start seeing people out there looking around, and then as July goes on, you see more and more anglers out there, and then come August, that's prime time. That's when everybody's out here along the face of the dam and along the east banks here by Riverdale, fishing that deep water with downriggers. So, they're happy with the number of fish they're catching. Most people, you get anglers like me that struggle, but that's with all fishing. Sometimes you struggle and sometimes you do well. But I think the numbers they're catching is fine, but the size, I think most anglers would like to see a little bigger. So as the lake warms up, a thermocline sets up, and the smelt and the salmon basically hang out along the thermocline or below it. And they can go above it, but that's where they like, that colder water at the thermocline and below. So that's where anglers, when they're fishing mid to late summer, they're targeting that thermocline area to catch salmon. So they're tied to each other because of the warm water above that basically salmon can't come up and feed on, the warmer fish species that are above that and do well. It's not to say they don't, but they can't do well on them. In August, end of July, August, you're gonna need downriggers to get down to that 60, 70, 80, 100 feet of water. Usually around Labor Day, the beginning of September, the fish start moving shallow. And at that point, anybody can catch them offshore using a crankbait, casting out crankbaits, casting out a bobber with a worm, a bobber with egg sacs. So once you get to the beginning of September, end of August, beginning of September, all the way through October, and even into early November, you can catch them offshore. We've used the tagging program to learn what's the best size to stock them. We've determined that at 30 to the pound, we get past goldeyes as a predator. We can't really raise them big enough to get past walleyes and pike. So we've learned that that's the size we want to target, that 20 to 30 to the pound. We've looked at different locations for stocking, and we've basically learned that Government Bay and Rodeo Bay right here are as good as it gets. So we've used the tagging program to try and figure out what's the best way to stock them, the best place to stock them, and then also to age them. Well, now that we've kind of got the places and the sizes, we're looking at odorless as another way to age them, just as a cheaper alternative and an easier alternative. So when we tag the salmon, we clip off the adipose fin. And so when an angler catches a fish, if that fin is missing, there's a good chance there's a tag in its head, and they can cut the head off, turn it into a game and fish office, turn it into one of the gas stations here, Pick City or Riverdale, and they'll get it to us, or we'll stop in and pick it up. And then In the winter that year, we'll dig the tags out. We'll send a letter out explaining, when your fish was stocked, how big it was stocked, where it was stocked. But we've noticed that the number of heads coming in is declining. So I think what we have is basically angler burnout. They're tired of doing it. The ones that do it all the time, they're seeing the same results, and so they're just, it's time to give it a break, and maybe we'll go back to it. I mean, in the future there might be something else we want to learn. We hear that all the time. Our salmon are small because of genetics. Well, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana, we all have the same salmon. We share them. When one state needs some, we offer them up, and then when we need them, they offer them up. So the salmon are the same salmon, but they get bigger in South Dakota, they get bigger in Montana, and it's the forage. That's what it is. Montana has strictly Cisco, and they get big salmon when they have them Cisco that are stunting, and they can stay on those young of the year longer. After the 2011 flood, South Dakota lost a lot of their smelt out of the system. While smelt and Cisco compete with each other. So when smelt are abundant, they suppress Cisco in the lake. Well, when they lost the smelt in 2011, that gave the Cisco a chance to rebound, and that's why you've seen, I don't know what it was, 2013, where they were setting their state record several times, and it was that Cisco forage base. Now in Lake Skakawea, we have plenty of Cisco out here. It's not that we don't have them, they're out here. It's just that when they spawn, the young of the year, they just get out-competed by the smelt. There's some big salmon, especially in the tail race, when we do have good smelt numbers in the lake, and they get flushed through the dam every year. So down there, it's a feeding frenzy down there, so they can get really big. If we didn't continually spawn salmon and stock them, in a matter of 5 years, they would all be gone. They do not spawn on their own. One, we don't have the streams, the flowing water for them to spawn. And two, when the lake freezes over in the winter and drops, any eggs that would have been spawned along the shoreline would freeze out. So what we've seen is when anglers get out at ice off and they start catching salmon, that's a good sign that we have decent numbers of salmon out there, and to expect a fairly decent run this fall. So I would think it'll be pretty good.